The harder question was the one that my partner asked me. He said, Chris, you know that this is your moment. If this goes well, we're at another league. If it doesn't go well...
Hi, Chris.
Christoph.
It's great to see you.
Good to see you as well.
How are you?
I'm very good.
Come on in.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. EQT is one of the largest private equity firms in the world. Everyone in your industry knows you extremely well, but people who are not in private equity, I mean, what do they need to know about EQT, what you actually do?
When we were founded back in 1994, we came out of the Wallenberg group of companies. Our purpose at the time was to be more than capital. And now we say that we want to future-proof companies and make a positive impact. Since our founding in '94, we expanded from our base in Stockholm throughout Europe, into the US, into Asia, and now we're number 2 or number 3 in private equity in the world. We're number 3 or 4 in infrastructure, and we're number 10 in real estate, and we're still growing quite nicely.
I like this wording of future-proofing companies. What exactly do you mean by that?
As an owner of companies, our responsibility is to make sure that we set up the right board around the company, and the board's responsibility is to get the right management team. But around that, a lot of companies need tools and new technologies to drive the business forward. Like the last years, it's been around sustainability, digitalization. Now AI, of course, is the big one. You write a lot about that, actually, which is great, and we work with you on it. Next might be quantum computing. And these are trends and themes that impact all companies in every situation. So what we try to do is build expertise around that internally and with external networks, so we can bring that expertise to the companies. But we want to make sure that we're there on the cutting edge.
Should we go a bit outside on the rooftop?
Let's do that. Sounds great.
So Chris, you became CEO in 2019. I'm sure you had your own highs and lows as a CEO in that period. And I'm sure you had your defining moments for EQT, but also as a CEO. Tell me a bit about that. I mean, what has been one of those moments of truth for you?
There's no doubt that it's our combination with BPEA. EQT has been building our platform slowly but surely geographically. So we had a tiny business in Asia, but we realized that for us to become a global leader, we needed to have a presence. It's half of the world's GDP, and we thought we could bring something to the table. We brought together the largest private equity firm in Asia, together with our Europe and US platform, and became one of the largest players in the world. A big moment and a very intense process.
And what gave you the conviction that there was such a great fit?
The story is actually quite funny. So Jean, who has built the business with his team, he called my colleague, Thomas, and he asked, hey, Thomas, you guys have done a very successful IPO. Can't you tell us about that a little bit? And then Thomas called me. He's like, Chris, he's thinking of doing something. And I said, yeah, he is. That sounds very exciting. I'd met him once before, too. And I said to Thomas, why don't we ask him if he wants to combine rather than go it alone in an IPO? So we had the call, and then my colleague, Gustav, who's running business development, he actually asked at the end of the call, he said, hey, now that we've talked about IPO and all that kind of stuff, that's all great, but wouldn't it be more fun to create the #1 player in the world in private equity, which is the path that we're on? And John said, wow, I hadn't thought about that. And then a week later, Thomas and I flew down to meet him in Italy, where he was with his wife, and we had a long dinner. And that dinner was fascinating, actually. We covered 360 degrees around what it means to run a private equity firm, how important it is to have the right values and culture, what we think about compensation, where the industry is going, all the questions you can imagine that we could exhaust in an evening, we exhausted it. And then at the end of the evening, we looked at each other like, well, that was pretty cool. But we didn't really know what he wanted. He didn't know what we wanted, but it was a great platform to build from. And then from there, we connected again and say, hey, we should combine.
How did you bring your stakeholders, your own partners, but also then at that point, external shareholders along and convince them that this was going to be a great combo?
So when I first brought it to the team, people said, whoa, this is a big move, right? So how do you know it's a cultural fit? Is this really strategic? Should we use the resources behind it? Are they really high performing? Some of those are 3 of the most.
Are they all going to run away once you close the deal?
Yeah, exactly. And some saw it immediately, yet others would be the challengers. And I think that's very healthy, because these moves are big, and sometimes they're not right, and you want to make sure you figure that out. It was really about creating moments where the right people got together to prove it also to themselves. You know, their part of the business, whether it was the operational side or the sector teams or the performance teams or the senior partners or whatever. But it was a deep and intense process, and took time.
I've observed hundreds of transactions and integrations and supported many. And in the end, my observation is it typically doesn't kind of come down to the financials. In the end, the make it or break it for the deal is the cultural fit and also the leadership fit. Now you described that as a good kind of get together and you felt the stars were aligned. But I'm sure as a leader, you also had your moment where you felt, oh my God, I do put my head on the line. And where could this end if it goes wrong? So how did you navigate through that?
There are two elements to it. One is actually bringing the right people along to verify all the questions. They needed to verify on our side that we were as good as we said, and we the same, right? Because you're skeptical, and this is what we do for a business. The harder question was the one that my partner asked me. He said, "Chris, you know that this is your moment. If this goes to hell, you're screwed. You know, it's your head." I think those are the moments that you have to look at the whole situation and say, "Hey, is this really the right thing to do? Are the right people aligned? Do I really believe in it, or are you doing it for some other reason?" And it wasn't. I had no qualms at that point in time, but his question made me go a whole nother round around all those elements. Like, okay, yeah, I can't find a better path, so let's do it.
It was a big move, but I'm sure you also had your moments where you were wondering what could go wrong, and how did it feel?
It was a roller coaster ride. Because during the process, we started off at the time when interest rates were zero, our stock price was at all-time highs, there were no clouds on the horizon, everything was hunky-dory. And during the process, a lot of different things happened. The Ukraine war started, stock prices started correcting, inflation started to creep in, M&A processes take time. So there was a lot of volatility around us actually during that. The whole coming together. And what was fascinating about it is that once we found kind of the strategic North Star around why we're doing this, and we're doing it because they have capabilities geographically and competence-wise that we needed, and we had a platform in many dimensions that they needed. And we realized that coming together, we could be bigger, stronger, faster, and build an even better business for the future. So we actually fought through those troughs and valleys.
How has it changed you as a CEO, what you went through there?
The first year that I became CEO, I felt like I was running after things. Like there were things were ahead of me and I was trying to catch up. And I think that process, it was the opposite. So it switched, I think, from running after things to getting ahead of things. If you don't drive change, if you don't take the company to the next level, somebody else is going to outcompete you, whether it's organically or inorganically. And I think that's what makes this job fun, but it's also what makes it kind of relentless,
Now let's take a step back and come back to EQT. You did this acquisition a while ago. It's all going well so far. If you fast forward into 2030, what will the acquisition of BPEA have meant to EQT in the history of the firm?
It's transformational, actually. So this question my colleague asked me, it's serious. This is it. This is it. If this goes well, we're at another league. If it doesn't go well, I'm dead, and so is the firm in a sense, which was pretty scary. But it gave us a whole nother platform to engage with all the stakeholders around our industry. So global CEOs, the public markets in a bigger way. We have dialogues with clients now, which are much more broad across asset classes, across geographies. We do strategic partnerships. We're a force in the industry for change. That would have been hard to do as a regional player, actually. If we hadn't done this, then probably we would have been at some point shaped rather than being a shaper. And it's not as fun.
Chris, thank you so much for your time. It's great to learn more about EQT. I've been working with you guys for decades, but even for me, this was very helpful and instructive. Congratulations on the bold move. And thank you also for sharing some moments of vulnerability and talking how you took those moments of truth for yourself as a leader and for EQT as a firm. Thank you.
Thank you, Christoph.